संस्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. So we'll be continuing our discussion of the life and character of the great person whose only worship was silent work and earnestness was the keynote of all his efforts, and about whom the great Swami Vivekananda said that there is not a man of my age in northern India on whom his shadow has not fallen. This was the tremendous impact of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar's personality on his contemporaries. And about his many qualities we had summarized last time. As a literary man, he had practically no equal in Bengal. As a philanthropist and a benevolent helper of the poor and the needy, there have been very few like him in any age and in any country. Nearly all of his income was devoted to the relief of suffering and distress. Hundreds of widows owed him their maintenance, hundreds of orphans owed him their education, and he was honored by one and all for his simple life, for his great courage, and of course, his loving heart. So today we shall see how these qualities were manifested in his life, because without that we can never really have an idea of what these terms mean, like kindness, generosity, etc., till we see some incidents which show how these were manifested. For instance, scriptures tell us that we should tell the truth, Satyam Vada, but without seeing the lives of saints, etc., like Sri Ramakrishna and all, we can never really have an idea what does this mean, sticking to truth. So it is very interesting as well as educative. But before that, one aspect which we couldn't cover last time because we didn't have enough time, we will finish that first, and that is Vidyasagar as the brilliant author and linguist. We had seen his social reforms and other things, but we didn't have time for this. So first we'll finish this one. So about Vidyasagar the linguist, the points I will just share the image so you can see. Here you can see he is credited with reconstructing the Bengali alphabet. Just imagine one whole language. He had the courage and the originality reconstructing of the alphabets of one whole language. So he simplified it into an alphabet of 12 vowels and 40 consonants. Then his book Varna Parichaya, it is pronounced as Borno Parichaya in Bengali, means Introduction to the Alphabets, is still used as an introductory text to learn the Bengali alphabets. Then he was also a key figure in the Bengali Renaissance, a cultural, social, intellectual and artistic movement in Bengal from the 19th century to the earlier 20th century. And this period saw a magnificent outburst of Bengali literature with Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar being the pioneer. he wrote nearly 10 books on Bengal's history and literature, all of them being considered classics. And this is besides all these things we discussed earlier, social reforms and all that. He was the principal of such a big institution, so much work he had. So how could he do all this is amazing. And this is not the whole thing. So here you can see another image I will share. Yeah, this one. His significant works. He wrote biographical notes on numerous noteworthy personalities so that the younger generation could get inspired by reading the great examples of endurance, etc. And some of his works are Betal, Panchavinkshati, Banglar Itihas, Jivan Charit, Shakuntala, Mahabharat, Sitar Vanvas, Bhranti Vilas, Oti Olpo Hoilo, Abar Oti Olpo Hoilo, Brajavilas, Ratna Pariksha, and then he also wrote on social reforms, Vidhva Vivaha and Bahu Vivaha. So how could he find time for all this? Is unimaginable. But these don't give a complete picture, what we have seen. So, I mean, the time frame, if we don't know how these works came by one, so what I did was from his life, I took those portions of his literary work and arranged them together. Then we will see the speed at which this amazing man produced such gems in spite of all other things he was doing. So just see. Now in April 1851 appeared his Shishu Shiksha. Shishu means child, Shiksha is education. Now part 4. Why part 4? See, what happened was, it was named part 4 because one scholar, Madan Mohan Tarka Lankar, had already issued Shishu Shiksha parts 1, 2 and 3. And Vidyasagar had obtained the copyrights of all those parts. So this was named Shishu Shiksha part 4, but the name was changed later. Its present name is Bodhodaya. So now see, in April 51, this book appeared, compiled from the Chambers Rudiments of Knowledge for the use of the girls of the Bethune school. Then in April this came out. In November he published his famous elementary grammar called the Upakramanika. So this is actual date is 16th November 1851. Upakramanika Vyakarana. But there is a story behind this. And this story is so astounding that it is almost unbelievable. It shows two things. One is his extraordinary genius, and other is his unimaginable love and his great heart. So what happened was, Shri Vidyasagar had a friend and pupil. His name was Raj Krishna Banerjee. So this friend and pupil started studying Sanskrit under Vidyasagar. Vidyasagar encouraged him, but studying Sanskrit is no joke, because problem is we don't speak the language, neither do we hear the language. So what happens, after some time students get bored and they leave it, especially with all the difficult grammar and all. So in those times, the grammar which was studied was Mugdha Bodha. But that is also very difficult. So now Vidyasagar was afraid. He loved his pupils so much, he was afraid that it is so difficult, he will give up his studies. So what to do? He therefore thought of devising some method by which he could make the learning of Sanskrit attractive as well as easy for his pupil. Hmm. So after the day's class, when Raj Krishna had gone, he thought what to do, how to make this interesting and easy. Whole night he worked. Then when the pupil came in the next morning, he found to his utter astonishment that during the night Vidyasagar had written a short abridgment of the Sanskrit grammar Mugdha Bodha in Bengali characters, just so that his pupil may learn with ease and should not give up. Later on, with this as the basis, this Sanskrit grammar Upakramanika was published. Can you imagine? I mean, this is really unbelievable. And about this book, Upakramanika, the great scholar Ramgati Nyaya Ratna, he said, this is one night's work, mind you, the foundation of this book. He said, it must be said that Vidyasagar, by the compilation of his Upakramanika and other similar grammars of Sanskrit, has brought about a new era in Sanskrit education. Formerly, many English educated learned men wished for a little knowledge of Sanskrit, but they could not approach it because the grammar was so difficult, you see. Vidyasagar has cleared the way. It is his Upakramanika that has enabled the young and the old, whether in villages or in cities, to obtain some knowledge of Sanskrit. In fact, he says, if Vidyasagar had done nothing else, he would still have won the gratitude of all Sanskrit students because of this one work. So, this is the story behind one of his books. So, we don't have time to go into detail, but I will just show you the time, how one by one this genius produced his books. So, in April 1851, we have seen Shishu Shiksha Part 4 came. Then Upakramanika came. Then along with this was also printed Riju Patha. Riju means straight. Patha means path, straight path. Riju Patha Part 1, a selection of easy prose and poetry pieces from Sanskrit works. His Kathamala, containing some fables in imitation of those of Aesop's, at once attained great popularity. Next year appeared Riju Patha Part 2, a Sanskrit prose and poetry selection. Riju Patha Part 3 and Vyakaran Kaumudi Parts 1 and 2 came out in 1853. And the third part of Vyakaran Kaumudi followed the next year. Gradually he introduced all these books into the Sanskrit college. His Shakuntala, a Bengali rendering in pure prose of the famous Sanskrit drama by Kalidas, appeared in December 1854. Varna Parichay, an elementary reader, had appeared in April 1855, followed by just 2 months by the second part. Of course, and we have seen to him belongs the credit of having first classified the Bengali alphabet into vowels and consonants. Then, in July 1856, when the Widow Marriage Act was passed, he printed his Charitravali, a collection of short biographical sketches of famous men of the West, mind you. See scholarship. Then, in January 1860, Vidyasagar published in pamphlet form his contributions to the Tattva Bodhini Patrika regarding the Mahabharata. He started translating the Mahabharata. Then in April next year appeared his Sitar Vanvas, Banishment of Sita, a Bengali version in pure prose of Bhavabhuti's Sanskrit drama Uttara Charita. It was written in 4 days. 4 days. Vyakaran Kaumudi Part 4 was printed in 1862. His Akshay Manjari, in Sanskrit we will say Akshay Manjari, a Bengali reader for the use of young children, came out in 1864, followed 4 years later by the second and third parts. And then he had also gone to do relief work. We will see that later. So while he had been engaged saving the lives of the poor, he had composed Bhranti Vilas, a beautiful rendering of Shakespeare's Comedy of Errors. Yeah. So just see, I mean, it is what to say there. You can't say anything. Anything said means lowering. So just in very brief manner, because of lack of time, we have discussed his great linguistic talents and he was a masterly translator. So now we will go to the inspiring incidents. Just leave it.
Leave it. Oh.
So we had a glimpse of his inborn genius and thirst for knowledge by that first incident when as a young lad he walked 50 miles to Calcutta from his village with his father, and how on the way he learned the English numerals from the milestones we have seen last time. Then we also saw that the great scholar Taranath Tarkavachaspati was amazed at the young boy's genius and predicted that he would become the best scholar in Bengal. And also how Vidyasagar once defeated Ram Mohan Tarka Siddhanta, one of the greatest philosophers of the time, in a debate on some subtle point in the Nyaya philosophy. So all these things pertain to his student life. That is why it is said that he left for the poor student an unparalleled example of deep earnestness, infinite patience, untiring perseverance, and unprecedented success we have seen last time. So now some other wonderful incidents illustrating some aspects of his great character. So we will start with first the incident which shows his great devotion to his mother. So when did this happen? When he was at Fort William. He had a job there, we know. So at that time his brother's marriage was arranged. And naturally his mother wanted him to come. So Vidyasagar asked the permission of one Mr. Marshall, who was the principal, that he should be given leave to attend his brother's marriage. But nobody wanted to give leave to Vidyasagar because he was so efficient, and everything worked like clockwork when he was there. So Mr. Marshall said, no, how can you go now? The institution will suffer. So Vidyasagar came away, but during the night he was restless. He said, no, my mother's command has to be followed. So next day he went to Mr. Marshall. He said, I will resign. Yeah. If you don't let me go, I will resign. So Mr. Marshall, poor fellow, what could he do? He said, no, you go, because to find a replacement it would be impossible. So Vidyasagar went. But this was not a journey which we are accustomed to, go by some air-conditioned compartment in a train or something, or a car, nothing. He had to walk. And on the way, he encountered the river Damodar, which was during the monsoon season and practically flooding at that time. No boat was in sight. He knew that if he waited for some boat or something, it would be too late. What did he do? Without a second thought, he plunged into that river. and all with his clothes on. I mean, you can drown there. The clothes will themselves will weigh you down. Just imagine, he crossed the whole Damodar river by swimming. Even after that, he had to walk a long way. It is said that he had to cross another river by swimming. And he finally reached late night on the day of his brother's marriage. And his mother shed tears of joy on seeing him. She said, "No, I knew you would, somehow you would come." Unbelievable. Yeah. So this is about his devotion to his parents, and next we come to his great courage. Where principles were concerned, he cared for no one. So what this incident, very interesting incident. So in April 1846, Vidyasagar was transferred to the Sanskrit College as an assistant secretary. So soon after he entered the service of the Sanskrit College, there was an unpleasant incident. What happened? One day, he had to go to see one Mr. Carr, Karr, the then principal of the Hindu college, on some business, some work he had. So when Vidyasagar entered Mr. Carr's room, Mr. Carr was reclining on an easy chair, and Mr. Carr's legs were on his table. Vidyasagar went, he didn't even offer Vidyasagar a seat. And he did not think fit to even take his legs down from the table. Vidyasagar naturally resented, because this was just racism, Europeans trying to insult the country, the people of the country. So Vidyasagar said nothing. He knew that this was not the time. He would have to wait. Now, after some days, Mr. Carr, on some work, he had to come to Vidyasagar's place. So he was announced, Mr. Carr is coming. He said, okay. To one person he said, remove all the chairs. Remove all the chairs from my office. So when Mr. Carr came, he found Vidyasagar in exactly the same position. Vidyasagar was reclining on his chair, his feet were on the table. And Mr. Carr couldn't sit even if he wanted to. There was no chair. So naturally, huffing and this puffing with anger, Mr. Carr finished his business and went away, but he complained. So that is the way of the world. When we do something to someone else, that is okay. But if the same person pays back in the same coin, we think it is improper. So he complained. But Vidyasagar's explanation was such a brilliant one. He didn't shout or scream or nothing. Vidyasagar said, see, I thought that we people of India are an uncivilized people, quite unacquainted with the refined manners of receiving a gentleman visitor. So I learned the manners of which Mr. Carr complains from Mr. Carr himself a few days ago. So my notions of refined manners being thus formed from the conduct of the enlightened civilized European, I behaved as respectfully towards him as he behaved towards me. So what can you say to that? Nothing to be said. So it shows his presence of mind, his brilliance, and of course his courage. Then another incident. This is also about his great courage at a different time. So we have seen that once he had made the statement that for the widows he could even sacrifice his life. And he very nearly did sacrifice his life when many people had once made an attempt on his life, but by God's grace, his father had appointed a bodyguard. So that bodyguard saved Vidyasagar's life, that we have discussed last time. Now, this incident also shows his courage in same the same context when he was when people tried to harm him because of his promulgating this widow's remarriage. So at this period, when a great portion of society had risen in revolt against Vidyasagar, whenever he went out into the streets, people surrounded him, some taunted him, some abused him, some threatened him with assaults. All these things used to happen, but Vidyasagar didn't care. Such a courageous person he was. So one day what happened was he was told that a wealthy man had engaged some men to waylay and beat him. So those people were waiting for him at such and such a place. So what did Vidyasagar do? We cannot even imagine. Vidyasagar went to the house of that person himself who had arranged for harming him. So that person was engaged in conversation with his flatterers at that time. He thought that this time Vidyasagar was being given a nice beating. So Vidyasagar suddenly presented himself before them. They were astounded that this person has come to us. So they asked, "Why have you come?" So Vidyasagar said that I have heard that you have engaged men to beat me and they are always looking out for me. So I want to save you the trouble. I thought it better to present myself before you. Now if you want to beat me, you can beat me. Just imagine his courage. So those people were either, if they had any shame, they were ashamed or something happened, so they did not harm Vidyasagar at all. So this was his great courage. Now another incident. These incidents are not connected. You see, I've just compiled them. These belong to various time frames. So one incident I will mention is great intelligence. How he could transform an unpleasant incident also to his own advantage. This really, it is wonderful. So what happened was Vidyasagar was working, to further the cause of education and to start schools, etc. for the students. So naturally, for this, he needed donations, although he tried to do as much as possible from his own income. But after all, there is a limit. So he went to seek donations, and one of the people he went to was the Nawab of Ayodhya. So people knew about this Nawab. They knew that this was not the person to give anything, or he might behave rudely. But Vidyasagar went nevertheless. Okay, if he behaves badly, what to do? I have to do my duty. I will go and ask. So Vidyasagar met the Nawab and presented the whole situation in front of him, that he needed funds for all this. So Vidyasagar had got a donation bag with him. Even in kind, some people give something. So what did the Nawab do? Just see the insult. Nawab took off one of his shoes and put it in Vidyasagar's donation bag. Vidyasagar said nothing, no reaction, thanked him, left the place. What did he do next day? Hmm. He came to the Nawab's palace, stood in front of the palace, took out the shoe, and I think he must have placed it on some pedestal or something, and announced that this shoe was being auctioned. Now people there, all the rich people, or maybe they had some other motives, so they wanted to please the Nawab. Now Nawab's courtiers were also there, no? So they, in order to please the Nawab, that he'll be pleased that I have purchased this shoe, they started bidding. And the shoes were sold for 1,000 rupees. And we should remember, Vidyasagar's monthly salary was 50 rupees. So you can imagine how much was 1,000 rupees there. So Nawab heard of this. So some good was there in him. He was pleased at Vidyasagar's great intelligence. So he also donated the same amount. So just by his intelligence, presence of mind, Vidyasagar got this huge donation, and he did not antagonize anybody. That is the biggest thing. Vidyasagar could have reacted in a different manner when the shoe was given. But he did not, and he not only got the money but also pleased the Nawab. So this is about his intelligence. Now about his simplicity. Even though he had so much after the period of struggle, when his book started coming out, he received good money, but not a cent he spent on himself, just other than the bare necessities. We have seen that. And his clothes were absolutely simple. Those who have seen the photograph, that chadar he would cover, and Indian clothes and all those traditional slippers. So nobody could recognize him. By seeing him, nobody could imagine this was the great Vidyasagar. And many anecdotes are there of his simplicity in dress, etc. So, as an inspecting officer, we will just narrate one incident. As an inspecting officer, he once visited a village school in the interior of Hooghly. So by that time his renown had spread even to that small place, and people assembled in large numbers to catch a glimpse of him. The roads were all crowded, doors and windows of the houses also had persons peeping out, ladies were there, and some of the elderly ladies took their seats on the roof. So he got delayed due to some reason. At that time it was very hot, so many people had to wait for 1 or 2 hours in the blazing sun. But even in that intense heat they waited. At last they heard repeated shouts of joy. Then there was a big murmur, Vidyasagar is coming, Vidyasagar is coming. Then complete silence. What happened? They saw some most ordinary looking men were approaching the institution. And the ladies could not distinguish who is Vidyasagar. So they started grumbling. Oh, Vidyasagar has not come. Where is he? These are just ordinary people. Then an elderly lady went. She gathered courage. Who is Vidyasagar? So they pointed out, he is Vidyasagar. She beat her head. Scorching heat, we have been waiting for so much time just to see this person. What is so special about him? He just looks like us. So, yeah. So this was, people, they want all this flair and this, that, all this simplicity. Even in Sri Ramakrishna's life, we see. So, another very interesting incident. So now we come to what may be called the most important trait of his character, incidents which displays limitless compassion and all-embracing love towards humanity. There are so many incidents even on record that it is not possible to narrate all of them. And even those which are on record, we can be sure that they only represent a very small fraction of what must have occurred behind the scenes, of which nobody knows at all. So, I have just collected some incidents from his very detailed life, and some of these are absolutely unbelievable, especially the one which I'll narrate first. Is astounding, amazing. So, what happened was this. We have seen that Vidyasagar was always eager to secure jobs and positions for his friend, relatives, acquaintances, but only those who were really worthy, mind you. He never did anything which was, unethical or something, unfit person just because he is my friend. No. If he saw that someone was really qualified, then only he tried to help him in any way he could. And for people he did this, there are too numerous to mention. And for this, even he had to suffer some financial loss and also undergo tremendous physical labor. We will see how. So what happened while he was still employed in the Fort William College on a salary of 50 rupees, the post of the first teacher of the grammar class in the Sanskrit college fell vacant. This post carried a salary which was nearly double what Vidyasagar was getting. So this was a great chance for Vidyasagar's own promotion. So the secretary to the Education Council called on Mr. Marshall. Marshall was the one who was employing Vidyasagar to select a competent man. Naturally, Mr. Marshall recommended Vidyasagar. There was no one even close to him. So the situation was offered to Vidyasagar. But he declined the offer. Why? He had given word to one famous professor, Taranath Tark Vachaspati, a most worthy man, well versed in all the different branches of Sanskrit literature. So Vidyasagar had promised that he would help him if the occasion came. So Vidyasagar said, no, I won't accept that post. Taranath is very, very capable of this. So I want that this job should go to him. So he recommended him to Mr. Marshall. Now Mr. Marshall said, okay, if you say, then I have no doubt. But this was a Saturday and the appointment had to be made on Monday. At that time there was no phone, just ring up Taranath and he will come. No. Taranath was at that time at Kalna, 50 miles from Calcutta. And of course, postal system, there was no courier service, just one day there was no railway. Now, Vidyasagar said, okay, I've got the job, but how to inform him? How to get the message? He didn't wait long. That very moment, or maybe that very night, he started on foot for Kalna. Just imagine. He started on foot accompanied with a relation of his. He walked the whole night and reached Taranath's house next day noon. When they saw Vidyasagar had come. Why? For then when Vidyasagar told him the reason, he couldn't believe. that one person could be so broad-hearted, so loving, it is unimaginable. He was absolutely dumbfounded. And he told Vidyasagar, you are not a man, you are a god. Anybody who can do this for another person. Vidyasagar informed him, maybe he had to get some papers signed from him, we don't know. Then the same day Vidyasagar started for Calcutta on foot as before. With Tarka Vachaspati's Taranath's application and testimonials. His relation was Vidyasagar. He said, he must have said, are you mad? I cannot walk more. So Vidyasagar said, okay, you come by boat, but I have to go. He reached Calcutta on Monday, submitted Taranath's application and testimonials to Mr. Marshall. Can anyone even remotely imagine that this can be true in today's world of this cutthroat competition and all that? So if he was not a godly person, who was? Another incident where he again made sacrifices for those who were working hard in any field. So what had happened was this incident, at the request of one notable person, Vidyasagar started translating the Mahabharata. And also this publication was commenced in, we have seen, 1848 in the magazine called Tattva Bodhini. So some portions of the first Parva of the Mahabharata, Adi Parva, had already been published. But another writer, Kali Prasanna Singh, told Vidyasagar that he also wanted to translate the great epic. Immediately Vidyasagar said, okay, I will stop. You translate. So Vidyasagar stopped his translation for this person. Not only that, he assisted Kali Prasanna in all ways he could. Just imagine. So later Kali Prasanna said, he acknowledged, in the translation of the Mahabharata, I have had to seek and obtain much assistance from many learned men, and I am under a deep debt of obligation to all of them, and of these my venerable friend Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was the foremost. He himself had begun translating the book and already published a part of it. But when he came to learn that I was endeavoring to issue a translation also, he desisted. Not only that, he took the trouble of going through my translation and even personally attended my printing press and superintended the translation when business called me away from Calcutta. So when he went away from Calcutta, Vidyasagar, he organized the publishing. Just imagine. In fact, language written or spoken cannot express the extent of benefits I have obtained from Vidyasagar in different forms at different times. So, just imagine. Now, his loving heart. So, I'll just mention some incidents. Many of these we don't know really the date, but I've just compiled them one after another. On one occasion, when Vidyasagar was walking from Calcutta to his home, Veer Singha, he reached a field in the way, big fields where farmers work. So, from a distance, he saw a very old cultivator standing there with a load on his head. So that person maybe was trying to walk, but he could not. So Vidyasagar immediately knew that he was too weak to carry this big burden. Hmm. So Vidyasagar went to him, asked him, "What is the matter?" Then that person told, "My house is 5 or 6 miles from this place. And my younger son has told me to carry this load home." Hmm. So that person was helpless. Hmm. So when Vidyasagar saw this old man's condition and how his younger son was mistreating him, Vidyasagar actually began to shed tears. Actually, at once he took the load on his own head from that cultivator. And he walked those 5 or 6 miles to his home. He walked 6 miles, again retraced his steps, and reached Calcutta late because walking 6 miles means maybe 9 kilometers, 10 kilometers, again coming. Just imagine. It is said that for the poor, when he had some money when he started receiving money from his books, he would feed at one time 1,000 persons a day, poor people, if he could afford that. Then of course we know about his educational, how he worked for promoting education. In 1853 in Bir Singha, he opened a free day school, a free night school for sons of the cultivators, and a girls' school also. Then he had another great virtue, which is really so astounding, that those who knew him well, he sometimes paid off their debts, even if he had to borrow money himself for that. And there is one very, very well-known incident depicting how Vidyasagar did this, took a debt to help another person. This great person whom he helped was none other than the great poet Michael Madhusudan Datta. We have seen his genius when we discussed his meeting with Ramakrishna. So Michael Madhusudan Datta was then in France. He had gone with his family to England to study law 2 years ago, and after some time his Calcutta agent discontinued all his remittance. So even when he was writing to Calcutta, he received no reply. So he was alone with his family in a foreign land, and he was destined for prison at that time, because you have nothing, and maybe he had taken some money from others to survive, who knows. So he was in a extremely difficult position. Who would help in this situation? He could think of only one person. We know who that person was. He wrote to Vidyasagar. Immediately Vidyasagar procured some money, transferred it to Michael Madhusudan Datta. First he transferred 1,500 rupees. So we have an idea what this amount was. Then another 4,500 rupees he sent to Michael Madhusudan Datta's account in France. By all this help he survived, and he could return to India at least. So when Mr. Datta returned to India, he applied for enrollment at the Calcutta Bar, law. And he again encountered serious difficulties. Again Vidyasagar helped him. Because of his influence, Michael Madhusudan Datta got enrolled as an advocate of the High Court. Hmm. Then this was not the only time when Vidyasagar ran into debt to relieve others. Once he borrowed 7,500 rupees from one Maharani. In those days, kings and queens were there. Then another time he secured a loan of 25,000 from a member of the Paikpada Raj family. All this was done to help others. And unfortunately, we know that how these people are exploited. Many people, knowing of his great heart, used to come to him and falsely claim that they needed help, and then never showed up again. But Vidyasagar did not bother with all that. He continued to help people. And not content with satisfying the needs of those who asked for help, he would also, of his own, inquire of his neighbors whether all was well with them. So, once what happened, while returning from a friend's place at an advanced hour of the night, he came upon a person who was just loitering, aimlessly wandering here and there, and maybe that person looked in distress. Maybe Vidyasagar could see that there was something wrong. So he asked him what was happening. So this person, Brahmin person, said he was returning from a morning bath this was in the morning, sorry, not at night. So this person said that he was coming from a morning bath in the Ganga, and Vidyasagar could see that he was weeping. So Vidyasagar asked him what happened. So Brahmin said that he had in vain applied to many people for help. He was in such a difficult situation. But all of them had declined to help him financially. So when Vidyasagar pressed him hard, that person said that he had run into great debt to give his daughter into marriage, and he had been sued by the creditor in the court of small causes. He had a court case hanging over him, and there was no way in which he could repay the amount. So his name, the details of the lawsuit, date of hearing of the case, as well as other particulars, Vidyasagar gradually could make the person tell him all the details. So Vidyasagar said, okay, you can go now. So this person thought that I have appealed to so many persons, I have appealed to this simple looking fellow, he has also sent me away, nobody will do anything. So he frustrated, he went away. But by God's grace, this time he had appealed to none other than Vidyasagar. So Vidyasagar went. He went to court. He learned that the man had been sued for 2,400 rupees. That is what? Just imagine, 50 divided by 2,400 divided by 50, how many months of salary? He got the amount, deposited the amount, and told the court officials not to release his name, so that the person may not know who his benefactor was. And there are some other details, but we don't have time for this, so this incident. Then another one. At another time, a fearful famine broke out in Orissa and also the southern part of Bengal. Because of lack of rainfall, many people perished. And those who left their homes because of starvation for some city or something. Sometime they perished on the way because they had nothing to eat. So government did what it could to suffer to alleviate the sufferings, but it was practically nothing with what was needed. The scale was so big. Vidyasagar, immediately when he heard, he left for the scene of this devastation and opened several relief camps. Hmm. And here also he fed 1000 people a day. And this was not, he did not have a great organization banking him or nothing, absolutely on his own. Hmm. So the government also later acknowledged his great services in a letter addressed to him. Then in 1869, when the malarial fever first made its appearance in the district of Bardhaman, he opened a charitable dispensary and supplied medicines to all, even sometimes going to their door, to their houses. So what he saw was, although this malarial fever were rampant, he saw that though this disease was causing great havoc, the civil surgeon who was appointed there, he was turning his back on all appeals for help. So he saw this will not do, because these are the people who are appointed, they have the facilities at their command. If they don't do, how much any person can do alone? So he at once he went to Calcutta again, went to see the Lieutenant Governor and told him about this. Governor heard him because Vidyasagar was a famous personality at that time. He removed that callous surgeon and posted a sympathetic medical officer in his place. Vidyasagar again returned to that place and did all he could to prevent further ravages of the malarial fever, and he took medicines with him from door to door and distributed clothes also to the value of 2000 rupees. Because of this, his health suffered a lot. So there are many incidents, many miscellaneous incidents, and we don't have much time. So in 1843, what happened? Gangadhar Tark Vagish, one of the professors of the Sanskrit college, had an attack of cholera. No sooner did the news reach Vidyasagar than he hastened to the spot, accompanied with his friend, Dr. Durga Charan, and helped this professor recover. He supplied him with medicines and diet out of his own funds. Then on another occasion, Vidyasagar was told that one Ishwar Chandra Bhattacharya, who was a nephew of a very famous professor, was suffering from cholera and no one to help him. Immediately at night he went to his home, to the patient's home, and did all he could for his treatment. So, regarding his great heart, his disciple Raj Krishna, for whom he had written that Upakramanika, he said later that it is not possible for anyone to recollect all the unselfish deeds which Vidyasagar had done. There are simply too many for me to enumerate and for you to hear, he told his friend. The recollection of the benevolent acts of this incarnation of kindness calls his noble image vividly to my mind. At that time, Vidyasagar had passed away, most probably. The very thought of this man brings tears to the eyes. Alas, we shall no more find a man equal to him in charitableness and kindness. So we can say that to the unselfish service of man, he devoted his entire life. Hmm. And for that, he never desired any kind of recognition. Duty to all mankind for duty's sake was his guiding principle. And this was not to any particular creed, any particular caste, no. All persons, without any distinction of color, creed, benefited by his generosity. He could have left and heaped behind a huge fortune, but he preferred to live in voluntary poverty. Unbelievable. And though he was very prosperous at one time when he achieved fame and when he had so many books and all, but this luxury did not soften him because he never indulged in any luxury. His habits were always austere. Even a simple thing, smallest of things, he would never waste, even when he was very prosperous. Because earlier he had struggled so hard. He knew the value of things because he had learned to work hard and live frugally. So, almost the whole of his income was dedicated to service of man, and this justly gained him the honorable title of, one more title, Daya Sagar. Daya means compassion. So not only was he an ocean of knowledge, but also an ocean of compassion. And Swami Akhandananda, the disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, has mentioned one incident. There was one Jhandu Bhatt in Gujarat, a great admirer of Vidyasagar. When he used to hear the biography of Vidyasagar, Akhandananji says, tears would start flowing through his eyes. He was so moved by this wonderful man. So, let us conclude now because we can never really finish telling about this amazing person, amazing in every way. So I will just share some photographs and I will also tell about his last days. This you can see here that a stamp had been brought by the government of India honoring Vidyasagar. So Vidyasagar passed away on 29 July 1891. He had a long period of illness and he was not very old. He was only 70 years old at that time. But these people actually never really die because their wonderful deeds continue to inspire mankind for all time to come. And in the end, I will like to quote from Swami Tathagatananda's article on Vidyasagar, which had appeared in the Prabuddha Bharata. He says, in his life, Vidyasagar very ably represented the essence of unselfishness and human sublimity, of scholarly profundity and ascetic simplicity, missionary zeal and unbounded love. The combination of stern resolve and uncompromising independence, self-reliance and mother-like tenderness of heart, such as was met with in this great son of India, is really extremely rare. Rightly, Michael Madhusudan Datta described Vidyasagar as having the genius and wisdom of an ancient sage, the energy of an Englishman, and the heart of a Bengali mother. So, let us stop for today.